One of the things that I get asked about most often is how to plan an elopement timeline here on the Big Island of Hawaii. And as somebody who loves to plan, especially loves to plan elopement experiences, I want to give you all of my tips and tricks for making your elopement day the most perfect day possible. Now, I do want to be clear, I am not a wedding planner. So I don't plan for groups like above 15 to 20. That's kind of my max. So if you're here and you like my vibe and you want me to be the person who documents your wedding or elopement, but you need recommendations for full service wedding planners, I'm happy to recommend them as well. Okay, let's talk a little bit about like the Big Island in general, because it's helpful to know the place that you're planning on having your elopement to help give you some guidance and some clarity on what your elopement day timeline could actually look like. So, the Big Island of Hawaii is the youngest in the Hawaiian island chain. It is also the easternmost island, and it is the largest island, hence the nickname Big Island. The Big Island has really two major cities and a couple of other smaller cities that are worth mentioning and totally worth visiting as well. So, the first city is Kailua Kona, and of course, there is an international airport in Kona. And then the other side of the island is the town of Hilo, and again, another international airport on that side as well. Most people who live here or visit here frequently know that you kind of think about the island as the Kona side versus the Hilo side, but there's also an area in the north of the island, the Kohala coast. And in that area, you've got Waimea, which is a really cute little Paniolo or cowboy town. And then there's also the resort area on the west side called Waikoloa. And that is great. It has its advantages, but again, it is a very touristy resort area. And of course, on the Hilo side of the island, there is Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. If you know anything about me, you know I love that park. I love photographing and doing video for weddings and elopements within that park as well. So one of the reasons that couples choose to elope on the Big Island is because of just how diverse this place is, especially if you and your partner are not on the same page about a beach versus like a forest vibe for your elopement. The Big Island kind of has something for everyone, and you can do most of the activities within a day if you plan well. So, Hawaii is a great island for people who want to have a little bit of everything or just can't choose beach or forest for their elopement. All right, let's talk about some of the questions that couples ask as they're starting to think about their elopement timelines. And the first one is, can we get married anywhere we feel like it on the Big Island? And the answer is no, you can't. While there are tons of privately owned wedding and elopement venues that you can have your elopement or wedding at, there are tons of public land spaces that are not available for permits for commercial activity. And that includes weddings and elopements. But that being said, there are plenty of places that do permit weddings and elopements. The important thing is that you have a permit for that process. And as somebody who is based here on the island of Hawaii, I can help guide you through that process. You tell me what you've got in mind for your backdrop for your wedding or elopement, and I'll help you to pick locations that we can get permits for, and then I'll guide you through that process of what it means to get a permit and who's actually responsible for getting said permit. Because sometimes it's your vendors and sometimes it's you, the couple. On that note, you will probably need a permit to get married on the Big Island of Hawaii if you're choosing public lands. So within Volcanoes National Park, you need a permit. On any of the beaches, you're going to need a permit. And then in any of like the state parks and the trails that are within the forest, you're going to need a permit for. So if you're not on private land where you have permission from the owner of the land, you will likely need a permit. Couples always ask about how do we legally get married in Hawaii, and the process is not very difficult. I'll link to a blog post in the caption below so that way you can read through the very specific details of what to do. But the big things to note are that you will fill out an application and submit it with an application fee. The application itself is not very difficult. The fee is minimal. However, you will have to meet with a licensing agent between submitting that application and having your ceremony. So it's super, super, super important that you schedule that appointment as soon as you know your location and your date for your elopement, because there are only a handful of licensing agents on the entire island. And it would really suck if you got here, didn't know you needed that, and then couldn't legally get married in Hawaii because you didn't make that appointment. So what's the best time of year to get married in Hawaii? Well, if you're here, it's probably because we're very similar in that we don't love crowds. So think about coming to Hawaii during times when kids are actually in school. You want to avoid scheduled school breaks. Think summer break, winter break, fall break, and spring break. You don't want to be here during those times because kids and their families will be here and the place will be overrun with people who are on vacation. Not that that's a bad thing. We love tourism here. However, if you're here to get married, you're probably wanting a little bit of privacy and you're wanting to be able to kind of spread out a little bit, and you really can't do that during those vacation times for the kids in school. Okay, so at this point, you're probably sold on eloping on the big island of Hawaii, and you're starting to think about all of the logistics that come along with this. And this is where it can be a little bit overwhelming, but having a vendor like me who helps you with all of the planning, but then is also there with you to document. So I will know all of the important things to you while I'm there doing your photos and video is super helpful. But let's kind of take a general view. About 6 to 12 months from your elopement date, you want to start doing your vision planning and your booking, right? You and your partner really want to start thinking about what you want your elopement experience to feel like, what you want it to look like, what you want your backdrop to be like. And you want to start booking your vendors because vendors here for weddings do book up about 6 to 12 months in advance. Some, of course, have more availability and some, of course, book much further out than that. But 6 to 12 months is kind of that sweet spot. And I'm finding that we are having less and less time between booking and the actual elopement day in the wedding industry right now. So that 6 to 12 months out is going to be the sweet spot. You'll probably be able to get a yes for availability from the vendors that you really want to work with. So again, start thinking about what you want this experience to feel like. Do you want it to just be you and your partner? Do you want it to be kind of a combination of you and your partner only and maybe a handful of people that you love to be around? Or do you want it to feel like a big wedding celebration and you want to invite everyone you know? Start thinking about those things. And again, you want to book your vendors. Get them ahead of time as soon as you have a date and at least an idea of the location that you're thinking of for your elopement. You want to go ahead and start booking those vendors. And the most important thing, as soon as you have a location and a date, is you want to apply for your marriage license and book your appointment with the licensing agent. Have I mentioned how important this is yet? Okay, so at that like 3 to 6 month out mark, you really want to start looking at booking your travel and your logistics and your accommodations. At this point, if you're planning on inviting guests, you'll want to have about a rough estimate of how many guests you'll have with you, so that way you can start thinking about locations and accommodations that make sense for everybody, and you can start maybe recommending accommodations if you don't plan on all staying together at a certain location. So that 3 to 6 month window is really where you're going to be thinking about your travel and your logistics. About 1 to 2 months out, you want to finalize all your details. Make sure that you've booked all of your vendors, hair and makeup, flowers, photographer, videographer, planner, all of those people you want to make sure that you're confirmed with and that you have finalized the details and the budgeting and contracts and all of those things. And then the week of your wedding, I just want you to sit back and relax. I want you to enjoy getting here to Hawaii, enjoy spending time with your partner and or the people that you brought with you. And I really, really, really want you to make sure that you have an appointment with a licensing agent. Okay, so if you're planning a beach elopement in Hawaii, I can't recommend enough getting married on the Kona side of the island. There are plenty of beaches where weddings and elopements are permissible with certain limitations on guest count, but of course I can help you with that. That are beautiful locations, white sandy beaches, green grassy lawns overlooking the ocean, lava rocks that flow right into the water that you can step out on and have beautiful portraits taken on. So again, if you're thinking of a white sandy beach in Hawaii, then the Kona side of the island is probably your best bet. There are a couple of options for like more waterfally and rainforesty kind of vibes. And one of them is actually a helicopter tour. And so this helicopter company, Blue Hawaiian Helicopters, they will take you on a tour of the north side of the island where most of the waterfalls are. And they actually have access to a waterfall that's on private land. And they have a spot where the helicopters can actually land. I think it's like 40 minutes of landing time. And in that time, you can actually have your wedding ceremony there. I've done it a handful of times and it is so magical. Of course, another great location for an elopement is Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. If you're interested in learning more about how to elope in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, I definitely have a blog and another YouTube video that go in depth on how to plan that elopement experience and all of the things to know before starting that planning. So, if you're planning a Hawaii elopement timeline, you probably have an activity or two in mind that you want to include in your elopement experience. Whether it's on your elopement day or just during the time that you're here, that you're doing an activity to celebrate with your partner and or your people, there are some really cool activities here on the Big Island that I highly, highly recommend. So I mentioned the helicopter tour. You can do the helicopter tour of the entire island, of Volcanoes National Park, of the north side of the island. You can do a helicopter landing at a waterfall. There are plenty of options for a helicopter tour. You can also hike through Volcanoes National Park and hike across an old lava flow in numerous locations within the park. You could also watch the sunset and you could do some stargazing at the summit of Mauna Kea, which is a beautiful location that is covered in observatories because of how little light pollution there is here. So it makes it a great location for watching the sunset and then doing some stargazing as well. I always recommend that when you're here on the Big Island, you do something on the water. So it could be a chartered fishing experience going for blue marlin. It could be doing a snorkeling excursion, kayaking, any of those kinds of things. But I do want to highlight going night snorkeling with the manta rays. That is so cool and highly recommend. It is worth getting over a fear of getting into the ocean at dark because these creatures are absolutely majestic. And the companies who do these tours are super reputable and safety is always the priority. During the winter time, the whales are here in the waters around the Big Island. So I love doing a whale watching tour. You can book a boat to take you out to the spots where they've been seeing whale mamas and their babies practicing breaching, jumping, and tail slaps and all of those things. Super, super magical. Also on the Big Island is South Point. It is actually the southernmost point in all of the United States, so even further south than Key West. And so that's a really cool little spot to go to. There's not like a giant monument or anything, but it is a really cool spot on the island where, again, you can feel the power of the ocean meeting this land that was formed from volcanoes. And if you go to South Point, you can also hike or hitch a ride in the back of an old pickup truck to the green sand beach. And this green sand beach is one of only 4 green sand beaches in the entire world. So highly recommend making the hike out there. Not super difficult, but definitely sunny and windy and hot to get to that location. And finally, when you're here in the Big Island of Hawaii, you can't leave here without doing a Kona coffee farm tour. There's this whole area of Kona where coffee is grown and it is world-renowned coffee. I am a bit of a coffee snob because of it, but it is a really cool thing if you're a coffee drinker at all to learn the process of how coffee grows here in Hawaii and then how it's processed and how selective they are with those Kona coffee beans. Okay, so let's talk through some ideas for timelines for your Hawaii elopement. So I love working with couples who want to spend an entire weekend or a few days with their people, even if it's just a handful of people or it's just them having adventures around the island and really celebrating the fact that they're here and they're eloping. So weekend long or 2 to 3 day multi-wedding experiences are totally my jam. I am somebody who can totally fit in with your family and get along with even the craziest of mother-in-laws. So if that sounds like something that is interesting to you, you could start with doing a day in Kona, exploring a coffee farm, doing some snorkeling, checking out a beach. And then on the second day, you could drive over to Volcanoes National Park. And as you're driving there, you can stop at South Point and do the hike to the green sand beach. And then have dinner at Lani Kai Brewing, which is a great little restaurant just outside of Volcanoes National Park. And then, of course, on your third day, you're in the park and you're having your elopement ceremony within the park. And there's some beautiful locations in the park for your ceremony. Another idea for your Hawaii elopement timeline is to just spend the day in Volcanoes National Park. There are a handful of locations on the approved list for wedding and elopement ceremonies in Volcanoes National Park. So based on what you and your partner are desiring and any guests that you may have and or limitations, I'll help you choose the best spot for your ceremony, and then of course great spots to take photos afterwards. Another option, and definitely not one for the faint of heart, is to do a waterfall and beach elopement experience. And this can be going on a private helicopter tour of the north side of the island where most of the waterfalls are, doing a landing at a private waterfall in the helicopter, having your ceremony under the waterfall, celebrating there for a little bit, getting back into the helicopter, taking a break after you get back, and then going to the beach for sunset and even a little picnic. I love this idea. It is like the perfect adventurous type session for couples who are on their own and just want to have the most magical experience. Another option for your Hawaii elopement timeline is to include both the beach and a mountainy forest vibe on the same day for your elopement. So I would recommend actually being on the east side of the island for this one and starting your morning at Punaluu Black Sand Beach. This beach is world famous and it is absolutely beautiful, but it gets super crowded during the day. So if you can start with an early morning start at the beach, have a beautiful morning ceremony or just portraits in the morning, take a break in the afternoon, and then drive up to the Mauna Loa overlook. You get into that foresty area, and then you're overlooking Volcanoes National Park, Kilauea, and the ocean. And that's, of course, an option for your elopement ceremony as well. And you get the best of both worlds. You get beach and you get forest vibes. Of course, your Hawaii elopement timeline can look like pretty much whatever you want it to look like, as long as we're following all of the rules and being respectful of the land that we are on. Okay, friend, if any of that sounded great to you and you're vibing with the energy that I bring to this whole experience, then maybe I am the right person to document your wedding day. One of the things that I love about love itself is that I get to be a part of your story. And it's just a little part and it's just the documenting part. But I love being a part of that story. And I love getting to know you and your partner and whoever you're planning to bring with you, if anybody at all, and documenting you guys, documenting you enjoying and interacting with each other in this beautiful place that I get to call home. So, if you're thinking about a Hawaii elopement timeline, even if you're not ready to book yet, but you're just curious and you want to make sure that you're on the right track with planning, use the link below to schedule a call and you can totally pick my brain. I'd love to share what I know with you and answer any questions that you might have.